Hello and welcome everybody to our NBA Trade Zone podcast where we talk all things NBA trades, past, present, and future. Hi guys, my name is Daniel.
And my name is Sebastian, and today on the podcast we're going to take a different turn and we're going to have some fun. I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast a few weeks back, and I heard them talking about expanding the NBA by two teams, and that gave me an idea where we will do like a mock draft, where today, this is going to be a two-part podcast. Today we're going to discuss 4 players each team is going to protect. That's going to be our first part. And our next podcast, we're going to actually do a snake draft where I will be picking for one team and Danny will be picking for the other team. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to think that Seattle and Las Vegas are the two teams that are being introduced to the Western Conference, and Memphis is moving to the East. And then we will have our draft on our next podcast. So today we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to discuss, I'm going to name 3 players from each team that I would protect. Danny is going to offer his input, and then he's going to add one more person. And if we have some time, maybe we'll talk about each team's who is like being left out.
Yeah, and just a quick overview, we'll be taking their contracts into consideration. So depending on how we really feel the team not only needs that player, but the longevity of that player will be taken into consideration here as well, in terms of how long he's going to be on the team, how long he might be on the team, and the importance of that player to that team. So we are taking age into consideration. We are taking potential into consideration. So we are essentially pretending that these are 2 new franchises looking into the future and not just for 1 year. So it is August. It is probably the most boring month of the NBA season. So we are just trying to have some fun with this. And let's jump right into it. We'll probably spend about a minute to a minute and a half on each team. There are 30 teams. So probably about a minute and a half on each team.
So we're going to start in the West, and we're going to start with the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets, the 3 players I would protect are Harden, Capella, and Paul.
Okay, so that's a pretty obvious choices. And then the 2 players we might want to take into consideration for them locking up would be P.J. Tucker and Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon brings instant offense. P.J. Tucker brings toughness and defense. Probably, who do you think they would keep in this situation?
If I was making a decision, and I would say that Eric Gordon is the person to keep there, just because he is that really really good 3-point shooter, which they depend on a lot.
Okay, so we will keep Eric Gordon for the Houston Rockets. Pretty much, Eric Gordon brings something to the table that maybe other players that the Rockets could trade for might bring. Essentially, P.J. Tucker brings a lot of toughness, but if he is drafted away from them, they will probably still make a trade for a couple other wing defenders at some point, either before the season starts or during the season. So we will decide to keep Eric Gordon in this situation.
Yeah, and Tucker, you could make a case for Tucker because of his defense, especially since they lost a lot of defense this year. But I think just because Eric Gordon is too valuable and he would probably be taken in the draft, that you don't want to risk him putting his name out there.
Let me quickly jump in. We do understand that this is not how an expansion draft works. Expansion drafts, usually there are 8 players locked up from each team, so there's no way both of these players would be taken, but we are trying to have more fun with it than an actual expansion draft is, so that's why we are protecting only 4 players from each team and not 8.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Spurs. I'm going to say the Spurs would protect DeJounte Murray, LaMarcus Aldridge, and DeMar DeRozan.
All right, well, other players that could be taken into consideration here are their first-round pick from this previous draft, Lonnie Walker. Maybe they'd like to keep Marco Bellinelli, Rudy Gay, or the center they just picked up from Toronto with Pascal Siakam.
No, Jakob Poeltl.
Jakob Poeltl, okay. Both of them have weird names, but in this situation, I would suggest probably keeping Poeltl from the center they just picked up from Toronto. I think he's, more of what you're going to get from him than from than you would get from Lonnie Walker, and both of them are younger than Bellinelli and Gay. So as much as valuable as they will be to this upcoming team in 2018 and 2019, I think having Lonnie Walker or Poto locked up for the long term would be a little more valuable to the San Antonio Spurs. So which one of those two players do you think they should keep?
Yeah, I mean, the case is definitely higher to be made for Poto just because he has NBA experience and you've seen that he could provide something in the NBA. It's kind of risky putting Lonnie Walker out there, but unfortunately, there's only 4 players, and I don't see the Spurs not protecting Aldridge or DeRozan. So Jacob Poto it is. All right, we're gonna move on to the third Texas team, which is the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, the 3 I would protect would be Luka Doncic, Dennis Smith Jr., and Harrison Barnes.
And this is pretty much a no-brainer. You're definitely just signed DeAndre Jordan for just under $25 million. You're going to protect DeAndre Jordan in this situation and hope it works out with him in Dallas for the long term.
And they don't really have anyone else that is really worth protecting there. I mean, they have that one, Wesley Matthews.
They have Wesley Matthews, but
I wouldn't see him going in the draft. Maybe he will.
And even if he does, he's not that big of a loss to them. He will probably be gone after this year anyway for them. And especially now that they've drafted Doncic, that's made Wesley Matthews much more expandable.
Yes.
From their roster.
All right, and then the Phoenix Suns, I would say we would protect Booker. We would protect Josh Jackson and DeAndre Ayton.
Okay, and then they just selected which one of the Bridges was selected?
Mikal Bridges.
Mikal Bridges was selected in Phoenix. They did trade up for him. Essentially, they did trade away 2021 Miami Heat draft pick for him, along with their other first-round pick from this previous draft. So it's pretty much a no-brainer that he's going to stay over there. Similarly, I mean, you could keep Marquise Chris or Dragan Bender, but I think Bridges is much more valuable than any of those two players, especially at this point. And they don't have much else on that roster that would be kept there.
Yeah, good riddance to those other guys who haven't showed any potential as of yet. Okay, then the Warriors is going to be a tough one. I mean, not really a tough one, but if I'm the Warriors, I'd be protecting Curry, Durant, and Thompson.
Yeah, Draymond Green, obviously. They would not want to ruin that chemistry by letting him go. Obviously, they have Cousins there who will be coming off an injury, but probably if they were both healthy, that'd be a much harder choice because of how good Cousins is and the talent he provides. But even at that point, even if Cousins was fully healthy, I still think that Draymond Green is more important to that team, and his chemistry on that team, along with the other players, is just much more valuable to their roster.
Yeah, I mean, the Golden State Warriors are going to be the team that are going to get the most screwed by this. One of the teams that's going to get the most screwed by this just because of the level of talent that they have. Cousins is a 1-year deal. It's pretty much assumed that he's not going to sign back there next year.
Not unless he has a bad year and he can't make any more money somewhere else. I mean, the max the Warriors could pay him next year is under $7 million because they do own only his non-bird rights. So the max they could sign him is just under $7 million. So unless he has a bad year, he's not signing for under $7 million with any team.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the Lakers. The Lakers are going to protect LeBron James, of course, Brandon Ingram, and Lonzo Ball.
So I think they should probably keep JaVale McGee. No, just kidding. All right. Either Kuzma or Josh Hart. Obviously, those are their 2 young players. Both look to be valuable future players on the Lakers. Both look to either be traded by the Lakers in this upcoming season or stay with the team for the long term. Both late first-round picks last year. Turnout seemed to be like both will be good players in the league. So actually, last year's Lakers draft class might be one of the all-time best draft classes in terms of all 3 players being selected. But I think in this situation, you got to keep Kuzma over Hart, as unfortunate as it is. But Kuzma was more valuable to them next year, and he seems to have a little more scoring potential over Josh Hart in the future. So you do got to keep Kuzma in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Hart is a good player, and I know the Lakers like him. But they can't get rid of Ball, right? Because he was the second pick.
No, he's just got a lot more potential
And
than any
yeah,
of those players
and then
too.
Kuzma's there, so you probably are going to see Hart go in this. But unfortunately, there's really nothing you can do about it. These are the rules that we have created. So next, we're going to go over to the other Los Angeles team, which we're going to do the LA Clippers. They're obviously going to protect their 2 draft picks from this year, which is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I forget the first name, but I know his last name is Thomas. He's a shooting guard. And then the third player they're going to protect, in my opinion, would be Lou Williams. Who would you suggest as their 4th player?
I think pretty much obvious here too. Tobias Harris, he's still fairly young. Provides a very modern power forward in the league. Probably their best player for this upcoming season. I think, yeah, I mean his contract situation, him declining a pretty hefty extension, is very puzzling. But at the same time, if provided the right offer next year, I do believe that he does stay with the Clippers, especially if they fail to land a superstar like Jimmy Butler or Kawhi Leonard. I think he pretty much stays there, gets paid about the same amount he was offered this year in terms of the extension. So I think this one's pretty obvious as well.
Yeah, I mean, Tobias Harris is a talented player. He's still young. There's no reason why you'd want to leave him. I mean, the Clippers have some decent talent, so it means you're going to leave Gallinari out there. I mean, he's obviously been injury prone. If he had been more consistent, you'd probably keep Gallinari. Mute is going to be out there, Montrezl Harrell, but you're going to end up losing one of these guys probably. But that's unfortunate.
I think they'd probably like to get rid of Gallinari's contract at this point because that would just give them that much more flexibility for next offseason.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, considering it's only Gallinari, the rookies, and Lou Williams signed beyond this season, so they should have probably more cap space. Definitely more cap space than the Lakers next year. So that'll actually be one of the fun teams to watch next offseason too, to see what they do.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have Sacramento, which is just loads of talent. I think the players they would protect would be, they have to protect Marvin Bagley for taking him 2nd this year. They had to protect last year's their first pick in the draft, which was De'Aaron Fox. And then the 3rd player I said they're going to protect is Bogdanovich.
All right, so that leaves who out there? You got Harry Giles, Willie Cauley-Stein,
Justin
Jackson. Yeah, so a few. Willie Cauley-Stein was a high pick. He's been decent for them, but hasn't really reached the potential they've been hoping he'd reach. Harry Giles and Justin Jackson were both last year's selections for the team. Mm-hmm. Who do you think they would keep in this situation? I mean, they are pretty high on Harry Giles at this point. I think they do like him.
Well, he had a pretty good, at least from the reports are saying that he had a good summer league. He obviously didn't play all of last year, and he didn't play almost all of the year before that. So I think actually 2 years before that, I think he set out his senior year. So he is definitely an injury concern, but they did draft him. Remember, he was the number 1 person out of high school. So there's the talent there. If I'm the person making this decision, I would probably protect Giles just because I could see a team taking him. Justin Jackson, we know exactly who he is. I mean, he's been the same player for the past 4 or 5 years, even when he was at North Carolina. So I would protect Harry Giles just because he has that potential.
Yeah, and they do seem to be pretty high on him, so I do agree with that.
Okay, next we're going to move on to another Western Conference team, which is going to be, one second, I'm sorry, the Portland Trail Blazers. I think the top 3 here, maybe someone can debate the 3rd one, but you're obviously going to protect Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, and then I put Zach Collins on the roster of protecting just because he was their draft pick last year.
Yeah, so other players that they have there, they just signed Nurkic to a 4-year, $48 million extension. He is more of a traditional, old-school type of center, but he is talented. Al-Farouq Aminu had a sneaky good year for them this previous year, still fairly young as well. Mo Harkless is 24, but at this point, I think they'd rather keep Al-Farouq Aminu or Nurkic on their roster. So let's choose between Nurkic and Farouq Aminu here. Who do you think? I mean, do you think they want to take this risk on Nurkic, who, like I said,